where need arises like an act of God that you have to request an expedited processing, you can then request for expedited, or you can just do it all together, put the prevailing wage together, the whole packet, and submit it as an expedited request.
So the question that jumps into my mind is, do you have to have an actual act of God that's already happened, or do you know that there will be acts of God based on history that we'll know we'll have hurricanes this year? And if we have hurricanes, we need to have workers to provide the services in helping those hurricane victims. Is there any discussion on that?
I think so. There's not much buzz about this, and with anybody that I've spoken to or any of the attorney blogs that I've looked at. But from what I've gathered from my research or discussions is that just looking at the, possibility of a hurricane coming in through the season is not enough. Right. So if a hurricane forms and they have a trajectory, right, like the cone trajectory that they have, right, it's going to hit Miami. You don't know if it's going to cross over to Tampa, cross over and go to Tampa in that direction. So that's enough proof at that point to say you can request the expedited request.
So yeah, I mean, and that disaster relief takes some time, and so if you start when it starts forming, maybe it takes a week to get there, then you only have 3 weeks left in the process. Yeah, so it'd be really interesting to get all the prevailing wages for all the potential counties across all those states, and then just file expedites the minute you see the trajectory of hurricanes, right?
The cone of uncertainty.
Cone of uncertainty. That's I love that. Ben, Yesh is talking about the H2B project where she's doing prevailing wages for every county that could possibly hit by a hurricane on the Gulf and Atlantic coasts, and how to do that. She talked about the emergency ability on that. This is her highlight, by the way, of the day. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, I'm just reading what Yesh is sending me. She's done a really good job researching it, John. But yeah, we just have to have these prevailing wages ready to go. They're valid for 6 months, right, Yesh? They're valid for 6 months. So
that takes us till October. That's about the end of hurricane season, right? Yeah. It's usually from about May to September is what I understand. Oh, very cool. All right. Well, thanks, guys. That's a great highlight. Peter, back to you. Who do you want next?
Thank you, John. Yeah, so we're just doing the highlights of our week. What have we been working on in our practice? So maybe next we could do Zoe, since it's her first week with us.
Hot seat, Zoe. Welcome to Collab.
Yes, this is exciting. Nice to meet all of you. I mean, this is really yesterday was my first actual day. So I've just been learning the AI and going through a lot of these strategy sessions with John. It's been really interesting because there's been such a wide range of different visas. This is different than what my day-to-day used to look like, which would be more focused on one thing. I mean, that's really more or less what I've been up to for the past day and a half.
So call them ride-alongs, right? I got that term for when you could drive around with a police officer and see their day, which is pretty crazy if you ever have an opportunity to do that. But I had an in-law who was a state trooper, and I drove around with him one day. What a crazy life they live. So call them ride-alongs. So Zoe did some ride-alongs with me. So we just did an IEP, right? We've done O&As. What else do we do, Zoe? Did we do H1B companies? I forgot.
There was a potential EB-5 with that Indian client yesterday, maybe, but he also won I think he won the lottery, right? Which was also very lucky. So he's in a fairly good position.
We won the H1B lottery, right?
Yeah, the H1B lottery.
He's a New Zealander, and this is interesting, right? Just all these little factoids, and that's why I love having this. We can share them with each other. So if you're born in India, even if you become a citizen of another country, and India requires you to have to give up your citizenship. So he's no longer an Indian citizen, not like being a dual citizen. For green card purposes, priority date is still based on where he's born. So a poor guy still has 12 to 15 years on an EB-2 or EB-3. So so why the EB-5 is interesting is that now that there is a small segment of EB-5s, not all of them, regional centers in target employment areas, and rural ones are even faster than the high employment, he can file an EB-5 concurrently, meaning that if he either is on an H-1B, if he comes in on the H-1B that he just got picked up in the lottery, or if he is on a student visa on an F1, or even on a B1, B2. He comes in to visit, wants to take a look at his EB-5 project, then changes his intent after 90 days. That's a Trump rule. It used to be 6 under Obama and before. He could then file, and then within about 6 or 8 months, get an EAD to do anything, continuing on in his H-1B if he's doing it, or even start his own company and become an entrepreneur. And what we're seeing on the EB-5 is a lot of things, and I'll get into that on my piece, but fascinating spectrum of different visas that you were thrown into, Zoe, right off the bat.
Yeah, so interesting. I only recently even just learned what an IEP visa was, so that was really interesting to actually meet someone who, I don't know if he qualifies yet, but he more or less does.
He does. The tricky thing
basically does, yeah.
He's raised enough money from a U.S. investor. It's 267,000. Remember we talked about it was 250, and then they adjusted it up with some sort of. They just came in and they changed all these things and went up. But so he's invested enough money. But the tricky thing about the IEP is that the investor has to be a U.S. citizen, so he has to go back to this VC now and say, "Can I have your passport?" The second thing is that investor has to have invested in 2 other companies in the last 5 years for over 600,000, and those companies have to have either generated $500,000 or 5 jobs apiece. So that means that investor, and it's hard enough to get money from an investor, has to be able to not only give this stuff about him, but then disclose this thing about another company, right? And we've found that to fall down a couple of times when they're like, no way, man, we gave you some money. But the thing that he needs to go is like, if you want me to succeed, I need to be an American, right? And so that's the deal. It's a weird visa like that, but I love it because it fills a hole that has been in immigration forever, where we always try to get people to the O visa. But the O visa means you've done at least one thing and done it really well, one company, and had your exit or some successes, quite a bit of success, really. But this is really great because not only is it great for this kid who has a master's degree in artificial intelligence and has gone to American investors without even being in America or being an American able to work and raised 350,000, right? That's huge. Or the other pocket of people is the graduates of U.S. universities that have come up with something really great and they can get investors, right? So Canada has an investor visa that allows, if you can get the investment, it's done with the analysis. The U.S. and its weirdness has thrown all these other weird things on it that have made it just tough to use. And that's why you don't see great numbers happening in this. Okay.
Excellent, John. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure.
Now, why don't we move over to Sarah? Sarah, do you want to walk us through or share with us anything from what you've been working on this week?
Yeah, this week's been, so I recently started my own firm. I'm a solo practitioner. So this week has been really crazy. And on the immigration side, there's nothing really new or exciting. It's more been operations. I've been really focused things international. I'm physically located in Canada in the Montreal region, and most of my clients are in the US or abroad, right? And so I'm learning quickly about international banking and transferring how to get my money. So
that's I think that's an important factor that we shouldn't forget what we're doing here, right? So the Collab does not have to stay within the limits of immigration regulations and law. It's really to help immigration attorneys talk to other immigration attorneys about what's going on, and building a practice is no easy thing. And Sarah, I've known you for a while. Doing 100 visas a year for a company in-house is such a different thing than opening your own firm. And you just have a whole different set of headaches. And while some of it's really, really cool, it's a lot of things you've never had to worry about before, right? I mean, so tell us a little bit about, if as much as you want to share, some of the hurdles and how you've got them, or even if you have any questions. Almost everybody here has run their own practice. We'd love to share with you any nuggets of maybe it'll help, maybe it won't, but to get you across the line.
Yes, absolutely, John. And then if you ever need any questions, even regarding marketing or how to set up your own firm's website, how to get new organic leads, even that we can assist with as part of the Visas.AI support team, not just the 1, 2, 3s of immigration, and it really is what makes this so special.
Well,
Great.
Sarah,
Yeah.
Sarah, I'll tell you the thing I learned first and foremost as a solo practitioner when it comes to bank transfers. Those fees, Sarah, those fees that they take out, so you have to remember to always plan for that into what you quote to the client. Like, oh man, they took that much out. It's like, oh,
Have you thought about those sorts of concepts, Sarah?
Yes, and I do something similar. So I collect some upfront,
Yeah.
right, to get started, because the same thing. I don't want to find myself I kind of seem to jump in. I want to figure it out and what's the best solution. So, and then they decide, oh, we really don't want to go forward. So I have implemented that. I think so just a little tidbit, I just learned that this week, because I am in Quebec and I'm a member of the Banque of Quebec too. I have to have my trust accounts here inside the province of Quebec. So it's actually getting the money from the States to Quebec. And there's electronic, so we're not part of the ACH banking like in US, but we can accept, we do ETFs, or EFTs, electronic fund transfers in Canada. But when they go cross-border, because I was just sharing all my account information, banking information that's available to me. But you can do an electronic transfer from the US to Canada, but there's a different routing number. It's a secret one. It's not on any document. And it's for that specific bank. And then on top of that, you have to have a document. It's a specific form signed and on file with the bank. Otherwise, the bank will return it as account not found, even though it's there.
Wow.
And so it's been like 14 times. It's been kicking back and forth, and I've learned nobody really cares as much as I do, of course, right? Because
next 30 days, you'll be fine.
Oh, right? It's your money.
Wait, just wait. I was like, I've been waiting.
Have you looked at opening a U.S. operational office to resolve this, or does that have its own set of headaches?
Right. I think I'm leaning towards that. I just wanted to get 1 year in. I was trying to simplify, but I don't know if I actually achieve simplification. But exactly, I may. That would be, it would just be an extra step of taxes and whatnot across border, but
it would. It also, I think there's pros and cons to everything, right? So your pros are, if there is anybody that's hesitant to hire you because you're not in America, you then have an office wherever you want to have it. With what we're doing right now, you can see that anybody's everywhere, right? I mean, it's all there, and we're all there. So yeah, if you ever want to talk about that, glad to bounce it off, or just use this forum as hey, I'm thinking about this. What do you guys think? So that's an interesting scenario I never thought of, but yeah, good luck. Hope that works out.
Yes.
Sounds like an exciting
Absolutely.
week. Back to you, Pierre.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Sarah. So, Ben, how about you? Tell us about your week.
Just another busy week, right? So I want to talk a little bit about work balance, right? So I pick up my twins every day, but it is what I thought about this week is the incredible challenge, right? Now that you have your career, and I'm a solo practitioner too, Sarah, trying to run your own business, but at the same time, right, there's other factors in your life now that you didn't have 20 years ago, right? 30 years ago, I didn't have kids. So work balance, along with running your own practice, is also another hurdle that you face almost daily. I was rushing. I just went to have lunch with them at school because it's a fundraiser thing. So right, you got to pay $20. You can have lunch with your children, but it's just that, right? So it's an hour away from the office, and you're going, oh, I've got work to do. But at the same time, time with the kids, you don't get that back. So I just found that really fascinating to try to balance all of this. So
That's great. Ben, that conversation is really important because I think a lot of attorneys struggle with that. And of course, a lot of people in different professions. John isn't, no one is the master of everything. So John is human as well. But I think it's a great question to ask John because he really has a great life balance when it comes to at least what we see as his team. So John, what is your recommendation to someone that is really busy practicing, their law and still has to spend time with family and not take every case with them home on the weekend.
Well, I appreciate you giving me that. I don't know if I deserve that mantle. I think I made a statement today that I had one night sleep this week, which was not even last night. But it is interesting. We have a high stress job. Unlike psychiatrists that listen to people's problems, we're actually supposed to solve them. And if we don't, they're mad at us. And if they don't, they want money. It's crazy, but kind of funny. I'd say, wear a Hawaiian shirt sometime and don't take yourself too seriously, and try to enjoy it. Right. I mean, try to enjoy the victories. And we were talking about this the other day. Immigration's so fast and we all do so much of it that, you get 2 seconds when you see that approval come in. Maybe it's a premium processing case and you see it like, and then 2 minutes later there's an RFP or somebody's upset. You don't get to relish the victories enough. And unfortunately, but fortunately, you don't have to I don't have to wallow in the defeats very long either. It's really, for the most part, immigration, if you're doing business immigration, you get a lot more victories than you do defeats. And it's really interesting as we've weighed in to the deportation, which Yesh is doing some recently, and asylums that Alex is doing, and Zoe, you've talked about that world of immigration. That's hard. I mean, there are a lot of times hard to win, especially the deportation. I mean, the one Yesh is working on is a guy that came in on a visa waiver. I mean, there's just that, you say pass the visa waiver, but she found a U visa solution. And the weird thing is she's put in some amazing work on it. I mean, month plus work on it for a client that has no money, right? Like none. Like we said, you should see the psychiatrist. He'll evaluate the harm that your crime that you are a victim of does, and it's $500. And we've yet to charge him anything. And he's like, $500? Where do I get $500? I'm like, oh, this is how do you build a practice around that, right? I mean, that's tough. So I guess to answer your question is, smell the roses, right? Spend time with family, like Ben's talking about. Don't let it eat you up, and find, think about the positives. That's the way to get through it. It's the other way I want to say is there is no more rewarding body of law than immigration. And I've done a bunch of them, right? I mean, I hung my shingle because I wanted to pay for my rugby habit. And so I did everything. The first one I swore off was family law, because we're basically just going through divorces with people. I had criminal law until I actually had a guy with a 30-year deal on the table. And I went to a jury trial for him and got him a not guilty thing. He would have gone to jail for 30 years and he walked. And then he was a 6'7" member of the Mexican mafia, and he just didn't feel like he needed to pay attorney's fees. And I'm like, I'm not going to do this anymore, right? So I found immigration because of rugby. I got the first green card for a rugby player, and it evolved, right? But I found that we deal with really great people that just want to come here and work, and their mission and their dreams. That's why we call it delivering dreams. Their dream is to change their lives in a positive way. And it's amazing how rewarding that is, and how fun it is to get that, to give that phone call and tell them they got something approved. They scream, they laugh, sometimes they cry tears of joy. And I like to spread that around our office and have the people that are working those cases get to receive that. And it's a body of law that I've made lifelong friends with clients that I would never do with the criminal defense or the marriage cases, right? So remember that. That's the answer. Remember that when you're starting this up, the why you're doing this, and the why is at the heart of everything.
Beautiful.
Thanks,
Thank
Peter.
you, John. No, that definitely sets the tone for today. So since we're already almost halfway through our time, why don't we focus on today's topic, and perhaps if you want to share your screen with us,
Sure.
walk through anything Visas.AI related. Stage is yours, John.
What sort of topic? I know that Gabby usually runs this. Did we decide on a topic, or want to just?
No, she actually said that today you can freestyle it.
Oh.
Especially depending on what we're working on as a collective. I know EB-5 has been a topic of conversation as well.
Let's do IEP today.
Ooh, nice.
We did that with Zoe, and that was fun. So I think we'll just start an IEP and do it real quick. So, all right. So if you're doing an IEP, it's a fascinating visa. We talked about it, but let's just kind of use the technology to go through it, and we'll learn a little bit about it. So I'm going to just make a dummy case, IEP. Here, we'll make it Mr. IE, last name P. Okay, so in the technology, again, you can use the email and phone for the beneficiary, but you don't have to. When we don't typically do it, it's for clients kind of like Sarah's that are high volume tech companies that might have an HR director, and they'll handle that. And it's a welcome not to have to deal with that beneficiary who's really nervous and dealing all the time. The HR director sort of will keep us from having to deal with that. That's why we designed a technology where it didn't mandate it. But if it's an IEP, that's probably going to be dealing with the beneficiary and the petitioner are the same, right? So you want to put that email in there. So we'll do IEP@wmail.com, company address. And let's see this. This is a brilliant young developer from India. So we go up. Make sure you do the country and the flag. It's really funny. It's a little bit of a hassle, but even Canada, even though it's one, also it won't let you put in a Canadian number if you have the U.S. flag. So go to the Canadian flag. So okay, we're going to send the invitation out to them. We then ask Mr. P if he has the name of his company, and he does. So we're going to set it up. So it's P's Tech Inc. And so you can't use this email down here also. It's just a peculiar thing. It's very much tied to it. So if IE doesn't have any partners, he's just a first guy, he needs to have another email address, right? So he used his personal one there, but he's already set up one for the company, IE@P's Tech.AI. All right. And they have an American deal, and it's in New York. So we know it's a 212 area code and very devilish number. All right. And then remember affiliates, right? So say IEP comes from a big firm that doesn't do big lawyer, el@biglaw.com. And we're going to they can have attorney view. That's the same as yours. Petitioner view, a little bit less. Beneficiary view less, or view only. So we're going to give them full attorney view and do that. And make sure you get permission from the client to share that, because even though Big Law may have sent it to us, the client may not want you to share this information with them. So you can put them in there and not have them have any of this, right? And you don't have to send them an invitation. You just do that, right? But we want Big Lawyer to be able to see this. Why does it say it's not a valid? I've got an extra space in here. So, oh, we have 2 dots. All right. So continue. Then we're going to go, and of course we have 40 plus visas in here right now, and growing every day. So we're going to say IE has started an AI company. How about that for vowels? All right. So you can put whatever you want there. One of the things that we really want to dissuade our attorneys is don't use this as your strategy. Just use this as your notes, right? Unless there is not the right kind of strategy session in there, don't do it that way, because what we really want to do is think of yourself. The attorney is the architect or the doctor and they are the strategist, right? So it's our job to develop the strategies. If you don't use the strategy systems, you can't have anybody help you do this, and you're not building your case out, right? You're wasting the software to put it all here in notes, right? So we're going to put enough there to get us going. We go to IEP, we go over to strategy session, and we can pick either the company or the individual. It doesn't matter. So I'm going to pick the individual case strategy. I want to do it now. And then again, here are all my choices. And what you can do is you can start with the IEP and discover, we know he hasn't raised the money yet, but in talking to him, I think he's an 01, right? And then you go to the 01. Or it's like, hey, he's got enough money. Why don't we do the EB-5? He's currently here on a student visa anyway, and the IEP, is going to require him to consular process. But if we do an EB-5 adjustment of status, he can take the money he's got, invest it into a regional center, and even though he's Indian, it's current. So he's going to have a work authorization card to run his own company, right? So these are how you can play these different strategy sessions on there. You can do more than one, but I'm going to just do IEP right now. So the job title, IEP, is the CEO. His bio is IEP, graduated from Cal Berkeley with a mechanical, look at that, engineering degree in 2019. He received a master's degree in machine learning from MIT in 2022. He is on OPT under, well, no, we don't want to put that. That'd be more of a note. Okay, so that's what we want right now. He started IE, or what do I call it? IEPs. Tech on February 1st, 2022. All right. So it's an explanatory statement. All right. So this one you'd build on. You don't have to get this all right now, but what's your role in the operation, and how, there's a typo, and how will it advance the growth and success and result in a public benefit? Okay. So as CEO and inventor of an AI process to grow food in the ocean, IEP has raised $280,000 and been accepted into an accelerator called G Combinator in San Francisco. His patent is pending, and media articles indicate this innovation will stop hunger worldwide. Right. Obviously, not every case is as good as this, but this hits it, right? So that's explanation of his role, CEO and invader, how it will advance and grow, and the success resulted into it. So we have elements of success with raising the money. We have elements of success that he has a patent pending, and an article indicating this. So this guy's kind of on the verge of an O1, isn't he? But not quite, right? I mean, raising money, while impressive, is not one of the achievements. I had a guy say, well, I raised $10 million for my company. And I said, well, what'd the company do? He says, well, it never really got off the ground. I said, well, then that's not an achievement, right? I know it's hard to raise $10 million. I'd definitely trade places with you, but I don't know how to say that in an O1. Okay, so name the number of entrepreneurs. The reason we have this question is you can have 3, right? And they each need to have 10%. So they could have 30% of the company, a minimum of 30% of a company as a total, to do that. So let's just say he's the one, and it's IEP. And let's say for his 280,000, he's given up 30%. 70% of the company, name of the startup, I forgot what I called it, Peas Technology, I think, Inc. And we said he started in February 1, 2022, 23. Okay. I think I just said that. So we didn't need to put that. Okay. Government grants. And again, always look over here. Ovi's going to have some information, and we'll keep updating that all the time. But government grants, or you're able to do that as well. So you must have you can get, these numbers are weird, right? 105,659. It used to be 100,000, right? So they adjusted it up across all the different numbers. So that's where that is. So you can get a government grant, but it must be a U.S. government grant, not a grant from India. It doesn't have any of that. And the qualified investment, well, we said 280,000. Date the investment was received it on the day opened his company, made to the U.S. startup, and let's say this one was by Z Combinator Inc. To 123, 280,000. Evidence of investment. So let's call it a SAFE. You guys know what that is. It's a convertible note, right? So this is permissible. What you see here include copies of investment documents, including stock certificates, convertible notes, proof of investments, include bank records. So the SAFE investment agreement, SAFE stands for something, but it's basically, it converts. So it starts as a loan with a percentage, and then when it triggered by something else, which might be revenues or another investment, then it converts to equity, and that's permissible. That's what says convertible note right there. So we got that. Then we'll have the transfer of funds. So it'll be, well, it's bank records. Bank records indicating transfer of $280,000. If anybody has any questions or comments when I'm doing this, please jump in. From Z Combinator to Peas Tech on Feb 1. Into Bank of America account number 2345. Okay. No other investments, qualified investor evidence, right? So must be an individual in a startup in exchange for equity, convertible debt, right? But they also must have made a total in 5 years of $633, $952 into 2 other entities. They created at least 5 qualified jobs or generated at least $528,000 in revenue, average annualized growth of at least 20%. Okay. So that's what makes them a qualified investor. So what you can do is copy this and say, Z Combinator has made investments in startups to change is blah, 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 blah. Yep. I'm as follows. Then go investment of 500,000 into ABC company on 1/1/2020 as evidenced by convertible note between parties. 2, payroll records of ABC company indicating 20 employees. Okay. See, it's an or, right? At least 5 jobs or generated the revenue, right? So you don't need anything more than that. So that's 1. Combo. Then 2, C combo invested 300,000 into XYZ company on December 15th, 2019. Okay. Okay, cool. Now there's a thing called alternate evidence, right? So if you can't get that, there's some other things you can come up with right there. So we have issues. I think the real issues for these type of case are getting, well, but we have it, right? So we have the proof right here. These are the biggest things right there. Can you get your investor to talk to the other company to release this information, right? That's the tough thing about these cases, right? So we have that. Now it has to be an American investor. So the investor must be majority owned and controlled directly or indirectly by U.S. citizens, right? They can't enjoy any of this can't be enjoined from doing this, right? Y Combinator is owned by Puffy Z, the famous rap star, who is a U.S. citizen, as evidenced by his organizational documents indicating his 100% ownership and his U.S. passport. Okay. All right.
Nice.
Job evidence.
Oh, John, this is of course not real information. I was like, who is 50C? This is
You don't
just
know
like
Puffy
picture.
Z? You, sir, are not very hip. Never heard of Puffy Z, which reminds me, we just had Gabby got all excited. I'm like, who are these guys? Because you don't know.
Right.
He just names all these artists, these rap artists, and I felt old. But that's what happens when you have your daughter working with you. All right, so those are basically the things there. And what we'd say is, okay, that looks like a great case, IEP. And you go over here and you can send an affiliate agreement to Big Lawyer, give them a piece if you want, as long as you're going to practice law. And I think you can meet that. But we're going to send this to the beneficiary, IEP directly. We go to contract form. We select individual contract, go down here and do this. So a business plan is not required, but I think it's not a bad idea if they don't have one. Where's my attorney's fees? Say we're going to charge them $5,000 for that. We're going to do that. There's a form, 941. And there we go. And if we want to negotiate with them, we'll say, hey, man, we get it. We're big Puffy Z fans. We're going to do it for $4,000, but you got to introduce me to Puffy Z. And that's what you do. Okay. So you then go back and you build your contract, and you can go up here and open it up. See if you got anything here. So we have ours under our law firm. You can have your law firm name there. Then there's IEP in his email. And this go down. So I didn't put anything in notes, which would be down here, but there's the attorney fees and costs. And there you go. And this is a cool thing. Let me go back and then I'll go into that. This cool thing I wanted to talk about. We can then go here and say you don't want to charge them all $8,200 up front. You want to do it $5,000, right? He negotiates with you. You go there to $5,000, but I would suggest that then go back to the contract, put $5,000 down with remainder of $3,200 due prior to law firm
Yep.
Ability to process. Now, why would I put law firm's ability to process? Anybody? Any of the lawyers? Any of the lawyers know why I would put the law firm's ability to process? Why would I put that language in?
In case he doesn't provide you all the documents you need, or it's
Processing fees, like right before you process it?
Yeah.
No, before filing, we need to pay the rest before filing, right? That's literally.
Yeah. So if I just put with remainder due when ready to file, then that's when they're ready to file. What if he says, I'm not ready right now? I don't have.
Oh, I see.
If you say when we're ready to file, we're ready, got this thing buttoned up, and let's go. You owe us the money, right? Instead of let me push this off. So you want to anything with a contract, you want to clarify things, right? So that's the reason to do that. So if I do that, I can now I want to go back. I want to build again. Okay. So now let's see what it did to the contract. There's our note, right? There's our note. So now we have that in there, and we can then go payment. I can take this down to 5,000 and I can send it. Now that I've sent it, you can see it was sent down there. You can see it's pending, and you can take this link, copy it, and that way, if you want to send it to somebody else,
I see.
just go up to here, go to your inbox, get a new email, send it to whoever you want. Down here, paste your link, contract for IEP's IEP. And I'd like to do this. And boom, there you go. So if they have somebody else that wants to know that, you can do that. So that's how to do that. Now, the cool thing I wanted to tell you is since we've been doing these collabs, and I'm going to move out of this, we've discovered a company called Build Your Dreams. And we, Sarah, this might be interesting for you. Build Your Dreams offers financing for immigration fees, right? So that $8,200 is great unless your client doesn't have $8,200. And what you'll discover now that you're a sole practitioner and not just working for a company is they want you to be the bank, right? They're like, hey, can you pay me $200 a month? And they're like, I'm doing the math and I can't keep my firm open at $200 a month when I'm going to do all this work. So now it's kind of like we're Ford Motor Company and they're Ford Credit, right? So would you be interested in us to introduce you to them? We're going to add it. We're going to add it into our piece. As right now it's ACH, it's credit card, and then we're going to offer this financing element, and they pay you in full. And then they charge the client. So I don't know if they'll take everybody. We haven't done any of it yet, but the group that sent it to us said it was transformative. And I can see, I've sent out some $12,000, even $25,000 contracts this year or this week, and I don't think they have $25,000 in their account.
Right.
So they'll be saving it up, and we'll be chasing them and things like that. Does that sound interesting to you?
Very, yeah. Build your dreams.
Build Your Dreams. Check them out. But Gabby, I think, has been talking to him. I think we're pretty close into integrating it into our platform. So obviously we can integrate the platform for you as well. And so what happens when we just sent that email out, they get they can open it up, they can look at it, they can sign it right with their mouse, and then they can make the payment. Their two choices again are ACH and credit card or debit card. But this would then, hopefully, I haven't seen it yet, would then have an option that would probably take them to their page, right? They would deal with that. And then I think there'll probably be a window of time. I'm hoping it's only a few days for us to get paid, but we're getting paid in full, and that's fantastic. Yeah, because I know that we reduce our fees a lot just because it's too high. And I think if we offer a payment plan, we're probably reducing our fees a lot less.
Right.
All right.
Right on. Awesome. Thank you so much, John. Well, that kind of brings us to the end of the conversation today. Are there any thoughts, any parting thoughts, any further questions that anyone on the call today has for John, or John, if you have questions for someone else?
John, so this safe option, so I just looked it up. Simple agreement for future equity.
Yep.
Do you see this as a trend? Is this going to be a trend in investor visas and IDs?
It has been.
Right?
It's a Silicon Valley thing, right? It's
Okay.
these have been common for a while. They used to be called convertible debentures, and that was a weird word.
Okay.
It evolved to convertible note, and now they're called safes just because that's the initials of what you talked about. And that's the most common way for investors to, they get a little bit more money. They get it's a loan until it triggers it to be an equity piece. So very, very common. And that's why they put it in there.
Cool. Okay. Thanks.
So let's use this period, I think, is the chance, and let's take some notes on it, Pierre. Does anybody have a question that they'd like to pose to the group? And we may or may not know it. And I think we say, is this a 30-second answer, or is it a research question? So why don't we start with Sarah? Sarah, do you have any legal questions? Anything that you're like, man, I'm thinking about this visa. I don't know what the answer is. I've searched around. What do you guys think? Do you have anything like that on your plate this week?
I don't, not this week, but I do appreciate learning about the IEP. And yeah, thank you for that. Can I ask a question about that though? Because I know it says you have to have substantial ownership.
Uh-huh.
But then you had said you only need 10%. So is that substantial?
Yeah, that's what the regs say. So think of it as a threshold, right? The argument on it is the threshold is too high. I don't think it's that high, right? I mean, $267,000. You know, if you think you can run a company with a $10,000 investment, have at it. But what it's doing is it's moving out the game, right? The people that are like, I will get an immigration benefit by doing this, right? And I don't know if you've seen it much yet, but I would say a percentage of calls we get every week is somebody that just wants to get a visa, right? Like, they're not looking at the business. They're like, if I could just get that, then I'll be good. And they do it with the L a lot. And we'll say, look, you're really going to have a hard time getting an L with less than 5 employees, because you need to have 3 tiers. You need to have an executive, you need to have a manager, and you need to have frontline workers. And if you had 3, why do you need a manager, right? Like, you're going to have an executive telling the manager to tell the one guy what to do. So what these thresholds are just to make it real, right? So 267 is the threshold. Having invested 633,000 over 5 years is a threshold, right? 5 years is a pretty long time to show that you've invested into other things. What it breaks is that, like, if you get a fund today, and we're talking to a couple of our friends at IT Serve about putting together funds to then invest into young Indian guys to start companies, right? And they have to do 2 of them before they can do one for an IEP, right? If they had a $10 billion fund, why not just let them do it? And that's where the frustration goes. And why are these things the way they are? And they just are, right? I mean, there's thresholds. So the ownership interest, it's 10 for the first 2.5-year tranche, and then 5 for the second. So they can go down to 5% if they sell off their interest. Now, here's an interesting question for the group. Does anybody know what the P in IEP stands for?
Parolee.
Is it parole?
Parole.
Yeah. So what's the difference between a parole and a visa? Anybody know?
It's not status.
It is status, but a parole is created by a president, and a visa is created through regulations by Congress, right? So what makes that interesting? It's just as effective, right? This one doesn't allow you to change status to it, but a parole can also be taken away if the next president doesn't like it, which is a risk here, right? So this status was created because they couldn't get the EB-6 invented, right? So Silicon Valley really wanted to have an EB-6 green card. So instead of investing your money, it would have been, US people are investing in your company, you get a green card for that. They couldn't get that through. Barack Obama, in the last 8 days, meaning that he's already out of the presidency and he's a total lame duck, invents the IEP. Trump kills it, right? Because it's a parole. The Trump presidency doesn't want to have it. It kills it. The Biden presidency restarts it, right? So the fear we have is that you get it going, Biden's beaten out by Trump again. We know Trump doesn't like it. Then what do we do with our IEPs? Do the ones that are currently going still get to go forward, or are they out, right? So it's an interesting indication. I didn't know that myself, and I always wondered, because people said a parole isn't a visa. Well, what is it? Well, it's a presidential created immigration status.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Alrighty. Guys, sorry to cut you off, but we have a hard stop. There's other commitments waiting for some of us.
Yep.
So I want to thank everyone for attending today's call. This has really been helpful. I think next week's call, one thing that I'd love for us to cover, John, is really understanding how you can spot an abusive client ahead of time, and how you can handle someone who is sucking all of your energy and from other people that really are serious and really want their dream built. I think it's a really important topic for all of us.
I hope I learn how to do that. I've not mastered that skill.
$1 million question.
It's a great subject to talk about, and we'll talk about that. I really like pulling in these other elements of just being a lawyer and doing our jobs and having a happy life. So have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Happy Friday.
Thanks, Carl.
Great to see y'all.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Sarah.
Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.